Hi, this is Adam with PhotoNerdsUnite.com, and today I want to talk to you about editing your pictures. More importantly, we're going to show you some tricks to control the edits so that you don't push the editing process too far. If you've ever looked at any of your favorite social media sites like Facebook, Flickr, 500 Pixels, Instagram, it's very rare that you've seen a photograph that's coming straight out of the camera and looks amazing. In today's digital world, it's almost impossible to get away with taking a photograph and not processing it with some sort of third-party software like Photoshop or Lightroom. It's definitely an integral part of what we do as artists. We take the photo and then we process them later. But with that said, it's far too easy to over-process a photograph. And Lightroom is one of the tools that I think is notorious for this because it's so easy to just go over to these sliders and start cranking on things, and before you know it, you're looking at a photograph like this one that looks like it's pretty much just been peed all over. If you take a look at the before image, it doesn't look nearly anything like what the after picture looks like. So why do we insist on taking our pictures past the breaking point and take it to this level? In this video, I want to show you a couple of really quick tips that will hopefully help stop this from happening. They're very simple, almost too basic, and might even seem somewhat obvious, but hopefully you'll enjoy these tips and will learn to control the urge of over processing your photographs. So we're going to go ahead and use the same exact photograph that was in the opening of this video. I've just gone ahead and reset it back to its straight out of the camera look and feel. Now whenever I go to edit a photograph, I always start in the basics panel, so that's where we're going to start this time. Now what we're going to do is push the sliders too far on purpose. So if I wanted to add some saturation to this photograph, I'm going to jam the saturation all the way up to 100%. As well, I can bump the vibrance all the way up to 100%. That's looking amazing. No, it isn't. So now what I need to do is start to back this down until it looks like I've made no changes at all, or until it starts to look more like an original photograph. So I'm going to back this vibrance down until it starts to look a little bit more natural, and then I'm going to go to the saturation and start to back that down until this looks also a little bit more natural. Something that looks natural to my eye, or what I remembered this photograph looking like. And by the time I get to that point in time, you'll notice that both vibrance and saturation has an adjustment being applied. It's just not an overly processed, grotesque look and feel. And if I show you the before and after, you can see that a subtle amount of color has been added to this photograph. I could do this for any adjustment. I could go to the shadows and maybe bump the shadows up. And in here now it looks way too washed out. So I'm going to start to back it down to a fair amount until this looks a little bit more natural to my eye. That looks pretty good. Same thing with the highlights. I'll pull the highlights all the way up, which is clearly overexposed, and then I'll start to back that down until it looks a little bit better to my eye as well. Same thing with exposure. That's gross. So then we'll move that down until this looks a little bit better. Same thing with contrast. Now, another trick is we can go, instead of just moving on the slider, when I start to feel it getting pretty close, it's much easier, especially if you're working on a trackpad or a mouse and you're not using a Wacom tablet or something like that. What I like to do is actually click on the number itself just one time. That'll highlight it, and then I can actually use my up and down arrow keys on my keyboard to dial this in one tap at a time. This gives me a lot more flexibility and a lot more power and control as I make the edits or the adjustment. That looks pretty good. Another thing is when it comes to sharpening, we have a tendency to quite often over sharpen our photographs, and so what I'm going to do is head down to the details panel, and I'm going to pull the sharpening all the way up to an amount that's really awful. And instead of looking at the actual picture here on the screen, what I'm going to do is look on the loop view. And what I want to do is click on this little square tool right here, which is going to allow me to change what view is being shown in the loop. And in particular, what I'm looking for is any part of the photograph where there is an edge, in this case, the rock hitting the water. And when I click on the picture, it's going to lock that into my loop view. And clearly I can see that there is way too much sharpening here. If I move the amount back to 0, all the way up, down to 0, all the way up, as I move this back and forth, you can see some pixelating happening when I move it all the way up to that 150 amount. So what I'm going to do now is start to back this down until it starts to look more natural and more real, and that looks pretty good right there at 67. So clearly we're adding sharpening, but when I look in the loop, it doesn't look like an overly sharpened photograph. Another thing is when folks love to use vignettes. I often see vignettes that are clearly over vignetted. What we should be doing is looking for a vignette that's a little bit more natural and a little bit more realistic. So what I'll do is I'll pull the amount all the way down, then I'll adjust the other sliders to get the right shape and the right size, and also the correct amount of feathering. And once I have that, I'm going to back this amount down just like we did before until we have a natural looking fair amount of vignetting. I'll go ahead and tap in the number and use my up and down arrow keys to really dial this in. And so there you have it. I have in fact added -22 to the amount, and there is a clear amount of vignetting, but it's so natural that you can't almost tell that it's even there. So if I look at all the adjustments together, I have this before and this after, and there have been lots of adjustments done to the photograph, but it looks way more real than what I showed you at the start of this. And if we just compare this view to the gross view, oh wow, yeah, you can see how great that looks. So go ahead and give this a try. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel where we'll have a lot more videos coming to you soon. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode.